There are moments in life when something beyond reason begins to stir within us. A quiet force, invisible yet undeniable, that pulls us towards someone we've never met, but somehow always known. It does not ask for permission, it does not follow logic, and it does not wait for the right time. It is destiny calling, and when it calls in the language of love, no wall is high enough, no distance far enough, no fear deep enough to silence it. True love often arises not from conscious calculation or logical compatibility, but from a deep and mysterious pull within the psyche that defies rational explanation. At the heart of this lies the dynamic structure of the unconscious, which Carl Jung emphasized as a vast realm containing not only forgotten memories and repressed desires, but also archetypal patterns that guide the soul toward wholeness. Among these archetypes is the self, the totality of the conscious and unconscious mind, the blueprint of our full potential. The self exerts a magnetic pull on the ego, driving it toward individuation, the process of psychological integration. True love, when rooted in destiny, is one of the most powerful manifestations of this pull. It is not merely an emotional connection or physical attraction, it is a psychic summons to unite with someone who reflects parts of ourselves we have yet to acknowledge, embrace, or heal. The journey toward such a union often begins in a state of unrest, where the ego senses a missing piece, but cannot identify its form. This longing is not superficial. It is the soul's cry for integration, and when the destined one appears, they are recognized not by logic or checklist, but by a resonance that seems to vibrate through the depths of the being. This is not infatuation which is fleeting and tied to projection, but a deep recognition, as though the soul had encountered a mirror of itself, one it had always been seeking but did not know existed. The encounter is often accompanied by a sense of timelessness, an uncanny familiarity, and a surrender that bypasses the will. Jung called such moments numinous, charged with a sacred power that overwhelms the ego and shifts the axis of inner life. The unconscious mind operates through symbols and instincts, and when it aligns with another unconscious in harmony, a connection forms that transcends conscious intention. This is not something that can be orchestrated or manufactured by external efforts. It cannot be rushed, forced, or manipulated into existence. It emerges naturally, often unexpectedly, when both individuals are psychically ripe to receive it. The conscious self may resist, out of fear or doubt, but the deeper layers of the psyche continue to pull the individual toward the union. This is why people sometimes feel drawn to someone they cannot explain, why they sense a gravitational force that words fail to justify. It is the self calling the individual home, home not only to another, but to their fuller self. Even when circumstances stand in the way, or logic demands retreat, the unconscious pull remains active beneath the surface, creating dreams, synchronicities, and internal restlessness. These are signals from the deeper mind, insisting that something meaningful is at stake. The soul is not interested in comfort, it is interested in completion, and when love emerges as a function of that inner necessity, it cannot be silenced by reason or circumstance. It arises as a calling, and to ignore it is to abandon part of one's own becoming. When love is true and part of the soul's deeper journey, it ceases to function merely as an emotional attachment or romantic desire, and begins to act as a transformative mirror. In the Jungian understanding of the psyche, each relationship that touches us deeply carries within it a symbolic function, often revealing the very material that the unconscious wishes us to confront and integrate. True love, in this light, is not meant to preserve comfort or security. It is meant to awaken, disrupt, and initiate. The individual is drawn into a bond that does not just offer pleasure, but exposes vulnerability, evokes shadow, and challenges the rigid structures of the ego. The one we are destined to meet and love becomes, paradoxically, both a refuge and a revelation, forcing us to face what we have ignored within ourselves. This dynamic arises because love in its highest form activates the individuation process. The beloved becomes a container for aspects of our psyche that have been disowned or idealized. In this way, love begins to operate as an internal confrontation. We do not merely love the other, we are confronted with ourselves through them. They reflect not just our hopes, but our wounds, our projections, our latent potential. This mirroring function is not accidental. It is orchestrated by the unconscious to provoke growth. We are not drawn to the person only for who they are, but for what they activate within us. When the connection is destined, it comes with the power to change the very structure of the psyche. This transformation often occurs in stages. At first, the experience may feel blissful, euphoric, as the anima or animus projection dominates, an idealized image of the beloved that fits the inner blueprint of our unconscious longing. But as the relationship deepens, the projection begins to break. Reality replaces fantasy, and the raw human truth of the other person emerges. It is here that the real work of love begins. The psychological material that arises, old traumas, patterns, insecurities, is not a threat to love, but a demand from the soul to evolve. The relationship becomes a crucible, heating up all that is unexamined and unhealed, burning away illusion so that authenticity can emerge. In this alchemical process, love reveals its highest purpose. It becomes a spiritual path, not one of escape, but of descent into the psyche's depths. It is not the presence of difficulty that defines whether a love is true, but the willingness of both individuals to engage with what that love is awakening. True love does not flatter the ego, it challenges it. It does not avoid pain, it uses it as a doorway. Through the beloved, one is invited into a deeper encounter with the self, the totality of the psyche. This encounter is often marked by paradox, joy entwined with sorrow, closeness followed by distance, understanding accompanied by confusion. But through it all, the soul is moving, stretching, transforming. The love we are destined for is never merely romantic. It is initiatory, ushering us into a greater version of who we are meant to become. Synchronicity plays a profound role in the manifestation of true love, especially when that love is part of an individual's destiny. In Jungian psychology, synchronicity is understood as a meaningful coincidence that is not causally related, yet deeply connected through symbolic significance. When two people are meant to be drawn together, their paths may intersect in seemingly random yet deeply resonant ways. These are not accidents of chance. They are movements of the unconscious aligning with the outer world in ways that bypass logic. The unconscious does not speak in linear patterns, but in symbols, dreams, and signs. And in the context of destined love, these signs often emerge as repeated encounters, shared symbols, mirrored experiences, and perfectly timed moments that defy explanation. This invisible thread that links souls is not a product of imagination or fantasy, but a manifestation of the deeper archetypal structure of the psyche. When love is part of destiny, the outer world begins to reflect the inner longing. People find themselves running into each other unexpectedly, hearing the same name or seeing the same symbol repeatedly, or experiencing a profound moment of clarity when they meet someone for the first time. These are not moments to be dismissed. They are sacred clues left by the unconscious to signal that something meaningful is unfolding. The psyche, always in search of wholeness, uses the language of synchronicity to call attention to relationships that carry transformative weight. The sense of familiarity with a person upon first meeting, the dream that seemed to predict their arrival, the intuitive knowing that cannot be traced to any rational source, these are all signs that the self is orchestrating a union beyond the grasp of the ego. Such experiences often carry a numinous quality. They feel charged with energy, as if time slows down and the moment becomes saturated with depth. Jung viewed this as an indication that the unconscious is breaking through into consciousness, that the inner world is being externalized. In relationships, especially those that are fated, this externalization serves to awaken the individual to a truth that may have been dormant. The people involved may not immediately understand the meaning of these synchronicities, but they feel their weight. It is not the intellect that registers the connection, it is the soul. And the more one aligns with this deeper awareness, the more frequently these moments appear, guiding, reaffirming, and sometimes warning. The path of destined love is often strewn with these symbolic echoes. Two people may live entire lives unaware of one another, yet feel drawn to the same music, places, or thoughts. When they finally meet, the connection feels less like an introduction and more like a return. This is not simply because of emotional compatibility, but because the unconscious has been preparing the meeting long before it occurred. The signs were always present, waiting for awareness to catch up. Synchronicity, then, becomes the bridge between fate and free will, between the known and the unknown, pulling two individuals into a dance that is orchestrated not by chance, but by a deeper necessity of the soul. When love is destined, the path toward its fulfillment is rarely without struggle. In the Jungian view, this struggle is not a mere series of unfortunate events or external misfortunes, but a necessary psychic ordeal that serves to refine and deepen the union. The obstacles that arise on the path to true love are not random disruptions. They are archetypal trials encoded into the journey by the unconscious itself. Much like the hero in myth who must confront dragons, cross forbidden lands, or endure isolation before reaching the treasure, the individual seeking a destined love must undergo inner and outer tests that shape and transform their capacity to love. These trials are not designed to destroy the connection, but to forge it into something durable, something worthy of the depth it promises. The psyche does not offer true love as a reward for ease or surface-level desires. It offers it as a challenge, a summons to evolve. When separation, misunderstanding, fear, or timing stand between two souls, the initial reaction may be despair, but within that despair lies the seed of growth. Jung recognized that the soul's path is often concealed within the wound, and what seems like loss or rejection may in fact be a demand from the self to confront what remains unconscious. In love, this might mean facing one's attachment patterns, childhood traumas, or illusions of control. The beloved, by their presence or absence, becomes the initiator of this psychic descent. The suffering is real, but it is meaningful. It exposes the fissures in the ego and calls forth the deeper layers of the self to emerge. True love must pass through fire if it is to be integrated. Many abandon the path at the first sign of hardship, believing that difficulty signifies incompatibility or failure. But in the context of destiny, the obstacle is often the gateway. The trials purify the projections that were initially cast upon the beloved. They demand patience, humility, and an unwavering commitment to inner work. Love that is merely pleasurable does not require this kind of resilience. Only love that is transformative makes such demands. When the individual chooses to remain faithful to the deeper call, even in the face of external impossibility, they are not merely holding on to a person, they are holding on to their own becoming. In this process, time itself becomes an ally. What may seem like a delay is often the unconscious orchestrating the right conditions for the union to mature. The love that is meant to be does not vanish. It recedes, strengthens in silence, and returns when both souls are ready to meet without masks. The ego may resist this surrender, demanding immediacy or certainty, but the self knows that only what is tested can be trusted. The journey through adversity is not a detour, it is the path itself. It shapes the kind of love that is not only felt, but lived, a love that has weathered storms and emerged more whole. Destiny does not guarantee ease, but it guarantees meaning, and in the end, meaning is what endures. Within each human psyche lies a silent image of the opposite, an unconscious inner presence that Carl Jung referred to as the anima in men and the animus in women. These archetypal figures serve as bridges to the deeper aspects of the self, and they shape how we perceive, seek, and engage with love. They are not chosen or learned. They are inherited psychic structures that live beneath conscious awareness, coloring our desires, dreams, and attraction. When someone enters our life and mirrors these inner figures, we experience a powerful emotional charge. It feels like destiny, like a magnet pulling us into something beyond our understanding. This pull is not purely romantic, it is symbolic, tied to the soul's inner longing for wholeness. The love that is destined often carries this profound resonance because it does not begin with the external, it begins with the awakening of what has always been within. The anima or animus first appears in dreams, fantasies, and intuitions long before we ever meet the one who embodies them. They represent our inner opposite, the part of the psyche we must encounter to complete ourselves. When we meet someone who aligns with this inner image, we are not merely attracted to who they are. We are drawn to what they awaken in us. The encounter is transformative because it calls forth layers of the psyche that have been hidden, suppressed, or forgotten. This is why destined love often feels like remembering something we never knew we had forgotten. It feels ancient, inevitable, and profoundly intimate. But this experience is not a confirmation of perfection. It is the beginning of a psychic unraveling. At first, this projection is beautiful. We see the other as ideal, flawless, deeply familiar. But as time passes, the projection begins to dissolve, revealing not a fantasy, but a real, complex, imperfect human being. It is here that many relationships fracture. But when the love is destined, the collapse of the projection becomes the initiation into a deeper union. The other is no longer an image of what we desire. They become a reflection of what we must integrate. Their presence challenges us, pushes us, and reveals the gaps in our own wholeness. Love becomes less about merging and more about becoming. The soul is not content with romance. It seeks evolution. In this stage, the individual must confront the shadow aspects of the inner figures. The anima may reveal emotional chaos, dependency, or seduction. The animus may appear as cold intellect, criticism, or domination. These darker sides surface not to destroy the bond, but to invite consciousness. The destined partner becomes a mirror not only of our potential, but of our distortions. Through love, we are called to reclaim our projections, to withdraw them from the other, and to integrate them into our own being. Only then can the relationship mature from projection to partnership. The union that survives this process is not based on illusion. It is rooted in truth, in the hard-won awareness of self and other. The love that results is no longer a longing for completion, but an expression of two individuated souls walking together. And it is in that honest, sacred companionship that the destiny of love truly fulfills its purpose. When love is written into the script of one's destiny, it rarely comes as a passive emotion or an ordinary experience. It arrives as a powerful activation of something far greater than romance. In the symbolic framework of Jungian psychology, the self, the organizing principle of the psyche, uses meaningful relationships as catalysts to awaken deeper layers of purpose and transformation. True love, when destined, does not enter simply to provide comfort or companionship. It enters to ignite. It awakens aspects of the individual that have been dormant, calling them toward a life that is not only more whole, but more aligned with their inner truth. The experience of such love expands beyond personal satisfaction. It becomes a revelation of who one is meant to become. This awakening is not always gentle. It shakes the foundations of identity, revealing that the person we thought we were is only a fragment of what we are capable of becoming. The beloved becomes a mirror, not only to our inner beauty, but also to our unlived potential. In their presence, hidden talents, forgotten passions, and repressed desires begin to rise to the surface. The energy of the connection acts like a key turning a locked door in the psyche. Suddenly, the individual begins to move differently through the world, drawn to new ideas, new paths, and deeper meanings. This is not accidental. The soul recognizes that the meeting was not just between two people, but between two destinies converging to awaken something sacred in both. Jung emphasized that individuation, the journey toward wholeness, often requires encounters that destabilize the ego and reorient it around a more meaningful center. In destined love, this encounter comes with intensity, urgency, and at times great vulnerability. The emotions that arise are not just personal, they are archetypal. They carry the weight of ancient patterns and future possibilities. The relationship becomes a vessel for something that transcends the individual's self. It demands honesty, depth, and a willingness to surrender to something larger than desire. The soul does not seek security in these moments. It seeks growth through transformation. As this love matures, it often pushes both individuals toward greater expressions of who they truly are. A once quiet voice begins to speak with clarity. Intuition sharpens, and life becomes increasingly centered around inner alignment rather than external approval. This is because the connection has activated not just emotion, but vocation. It becomes clear that the love was never meant to remain isolated between two hearts. It was meant to inspire, to fuel creativity, to awaken a mission. Many find themselves drawn toward healing, art, writing, leadership, or spirituality after such a bond touches their life. The beloved becomes not a destination, but a door through which a deeper life begins. This is why such love, when destined, cannot be replaced or forgotten. It is not about the form the relationship takes. It is about the internal revolution it initiates. Even if the path diverges, the impact remains. The person awakened by this love is not the same as before. They have been called by something eternal, and that call echoes through everything they choose to become. In the depth of our psyche lies a sacred blueprint, a map not drawn by our hands, but woven by the timeless force of the self. When love enters our life as part of that inner design, it is never without meaning and never without purpose. It comes to awaken, to mirror, to challenge, and to elevate. It arrives not simply to fulfill a longing, but to initiate transformation through symbols, through pain, through synchronicities and trials. the soul begins to remember what it once knew, that true love is not a fleeting emotion, but a force of destiny. And once destiny moves, no human resistance, no temporal circumstance, no inner fear can stand in its way. For when destiny calls, it is not the other we are called to, it is the fullest, truest, most awakened version of ourselves. And in answering that call, love becomes not just an experience, but a sacred act of becoming.